Haven't seen it. Do y'all have any more questions for me, or?
Any questions?
That's good.
Okay, I have a few questions, Councilman, if you don't mind.
Oh.
So the idea is that one of the things you all charged me with was to find the amount for signs. And so if I'm looking for signs, is this the type of stuff that you want? And then, of course, we'll have the housing to put there. You have some in your packages of demonstration. We're going to do that. It's two prices. One will be for here at City Hall, and the other, of course, will be on 97 for the event center. So this is the direction we want to go. I'm just looking for council to give me a nod. And consensus is okay. So we'll go ahead and do that, all right?
All right, thank you.
I'll give you a call.
Okay.
Thank you, nice meeting you.
Nice meeting.
Okay, now we're going to go on to item 1G, Visitors and Tourist Bureau appointments. City Manager?
Yes, ma'am. First of all, I want to apologize for a typo. I was counting and trying to get to 7. I left off the hospital as one of our representatives on the council that would get me to my 7th. So it's a total of 7, but in your packet, I only listed 6. And thank you, Mayor. And Chris came in right away and beat me on top of the head when I listed that too, because it is 7. Because you don't want 6, you do need to have an odd number. And so, as you see from the package, that you will approve us to go ahead and move forward. Later on today, hopefully we'll pass the bylaws for this council. And so this board will actually work in conjunction with staff to present and be able to make recommendations and coordinate events and all those things going forward to bring to you in reference to that. That's our hope, to use the hotel motel tax and start having activity in reference to that area. But one of the things we have to do is we have to appoint 2. And so we have applications here, listed on the website. You have some in your packages for 2 appointments for the city of Floresville to this board. And so once we have, I've spoken to representatives from the chamber, EDC, the school district, also the county and the hospital when the mayor and I went to their rededication service the other day, and they all confirmed that they will send a representative to represent us. And they're quite excited about it. I believe, what's the gentleman's name that was here before from the hospital? Monica?
Rick Country?
Rick Country said he's volunteering for it. He spoke and was very highly of the tourism, and so he's saying he would even volunteer some of his time to represent the hospital in reference to what we need to market the city, as you all spoke about earlier, and Richard touched on earlier today, so that we can market the city of Floresville. And then I think I had a conversation with Councilman Nieto, and he was saying that we need to get this board going so that we can put these things and have them vetted through that board and get this board to work. So this is what I'm asking, if you can think about, not necessarily, it's not on the agenda for approval because you may not have a candidate in mind, but to put it out there, we're going to advertise and we'll come back to you so we can appoint our representative as we go forward. Do you have any questions of me?
Are they going to be required to be living in the city?
It didn't require that. Volunteers don't necessarily have to live in the city, but if that's what you want, your attorney's looking over there saying you can make that criteria, but it's not one that we put on there.
Yeah, because it's not stated on this, I just wondered.
It wasn't a requirement in reference to that, but you can ask him in reference to bylaws.
And when we get to the bylaws section, if that's something that the council wants to put in as part of the vote, then that can be, once we get to that point, it can be discussed.
On the bylaws, is that something that's mandatory tonight? As you know, I just picked up the packet tonight. I understand the city secretary was out of town or something.
Yes.
Do we have to vote on that tonight?
You don't have to vote on it tonight. It's on the agenda for voting or for action, but you don't have to.
And they're very simple bylaws because it's an advisory board, but if you're not comfortable voting on it tonight and would like to get changes back, we can certainly.
And they are the same bylaws as, such as the P and Z and.
Not quite, because P&Z has some actual authority, just like the other committees do. This, since it's purely advisory, is a lot less. They can meet with people, they can give an opinion, but the city council has absolutely no obligation to go off of anything. There's no appeal of any decision that they make that's denied the decision and city council controls the money. They don't have any control. That's the way it's set up now. Again, that can be discussed and changed if the council wanted it differently. But
So it's purely, the bylaws are written purely, and please help me out, as an advisory board, just to get your advice. Just that they would actually field a lot of these presentations and put together some things in reference to, and make recommendations, but clearly, all of those hotel motel tax expenses will come to the council, but this is just an advisory board that can actually filter out some of those things in reference to that and see if they have direction. So yes, you would give direction to them, they would report to you, you can appoint, and I believe it was a 2-year, but that's a different subject, but it's a 2-year, as they do for others. So that's the purpose of this. So I just wanted to say that we do need to appoint, you have the applications in your packet, they are online, we pass them out so that we can actually start this board, but we definitely need to appoint the 2 that would represent the city. The 2 of the 7.
Madam Mayor, I know it's not on the agenda yet, but I'm going to make a motion that we table that for tonight.
Just wait till we get to that.
yeah, we don't have to move around the agenda when we get to it.
Okay, now we're going to go on to item 1H, holiday extravaganza, proposed budget. Mr.
So the markings are off.
It's under that fire package.
Oh, it's just a cover?
It doesn't go there.
Okay. Oh, okay.
Memo's wrong.
Yeah.
Okay, we are gonna talk about that, I'm sorry. I'm thinking, it's not about that. We're coming to the fire department and we get their name, the fire chief still, is he still here? He's still here? Fire chief still here. Okay, I apologize. The memo threw me off. Okay, so, the event budget for holiday extravaganza. The first page that you see is just a summary, so we can look at the second page and give us the detail, is that okay? All right, so in looking at what I've been able to gather is to have a sit-down table as it was before. We could do 1,100 people, okay? So that would be those tables, over 100 tables to sit there at $50 a ticket, would give you about $55,000 in reference to ticket sales. And then advertising could come in at $1,600 if you could sell it. Sponsorship is really important. And then the expenses for the account, because that's the income. And the expenses for the account would be, you need lighting, you need to rent a dance floor. So I know people want to do dancing. We have to have security because of the crowd. Tablecloths, decorations, paper products, marketing, photocopying and printing. You have some transportation issues because you do have to transport the stars. It is a transportation issue. Food, I understand it was sit-down dinner service, and then you would need to include an 18% gratuity. Linens, because it's a different kind of linens and what you need to do. Performers. Now, it's based on how many performers that you would want to have. You definitely need to have an opening act. You need to have a headliner. And the opening act would serve probably between our performance, then you have an intermission, and then you probably have a 90-minute show for your headliner. The MC, because you need to have an MC to help us put this on and direct people. A broker's fee. Now, sometimes it's assessed in there, but we want to make sure that we have enough money in reference to that. A DJ, because you need to be able to have music that's playing. I know this is a historical event, and so we could have mariachi bands playing during dinner because If you don't want to have that loud music playing through the dinner, if you so choose. And so if you look at the total cost, would be somewhere around $60,000. Your total expenses, your income would be $71,100, and you could net a profit of about $13,895, so right around $14,000. Now, the importance of it is that we need to not burden staff with this, because that's really important, because I know, using staff time, so if you have a broker fee, then a lot of marketing and advertising they come up with, because it's part of their fee to market and advertise. In reference to marketing and selling the books, you do have companies that will put together a program book for you and sell the ads. So it's not a cost to you, other than you can make money in reference to how much they sell the ads for. So those are the kind of things we were trying to do so that it's not encompassing on the staff. So this is my best guess estimate as a budget.
And they would sell the tickets and they would handle everything, or would?
Yes, your promoter can sell the tickets in reference to that. It's all how you negotiate it, but you would want to definitely work the promoter to do so. Because you have to remember, he wants to promote and advertise his artists and his recommended, I'm saying he, I don't mean to sound sensitive, but the promoter would want to do that. He also wants to be able to sell tickets, and of course, the more tickets they sell, they're able to do that. The opening act is really important, because artists keep resumes like everybody else. But I opened up for Smokey Robinson, or I opened up for Elvis Presley. Those kind of things you want to be able to put on your resume.
In what part does the visitors play in this?
Well, if we had one, and we're going to have one eventually, then what they would do is help monitor this. Remember, they're a volunteer board. They would help monitor it. They would make sure, that make a recommendation for what type of music, if they want to go with promoter A or promoter B, and have, because I've been contacted since this is a newspaper with at least 3 different promoters. I'm like, it's not me. So they would actually decide, help, make a recommendation and say, we picked this promoter because he or she had XYZ experience and they've done this type of performances and they wrote the best package together, and they make the recommendation for you all to say yes or no.
Which would basically eliminate, or taking the city staff out of the equation for all the footwork and all the time being dedicated to a project such as this.
Yes.
So the board would be.
The board would be like a sounding board to say, we want to put it together. So you can have one person who only brings one element. He's only able to say, I have the artist, but he can't bring the other promotion part of it. So you would want somebody who had all 3 components to it. The marketing.
Who would select the artist?
You could give them direction as to different what type of music. If you whatever the council say, you can say to them, they'll be the tourism board, we want to have R&B music, or we want to have jazz music, or whatever you would direct, and then they can come up with the artist that can fit. You're going to direct what type of artist and what caliber based on how much money you give them for entertainment. So you can set a budget, as I've done here, and say, for $30,000, you need to go get your artist. Well, that will only buy you this much in the artist world, depending on what it is. Or if you say $20,000, then you get a different type of artist. Different if you want the A, the B, or the C artist. But at $50 a pop, $100 a couple, you need to really have some artists that people have some name recognition. And your open act could be somebody local, and then you can go somebody who won some awards national level. But they're going to take their leads from you. But they get to do all the, and it's not a bad term, but they get to do all the grunt work. They get to meet all these people, have those meetings, decide, put it all together, make it pretty, put a package in, and then come and present it to the council. For the council to decide. On this event and other events, if I could piggyback off what Richard had earlier tonight, to say, if when we have the time next year, that we want to put other events together with his events, to not be in competition, but to work in tandem. I think as Mr. Gray mentioned last week when we were here, to say that we need to work in tandem. That person would help those things coordinate through the board based on the direction of the council.
Yeah, I understand. He mentioned also about the 4th of July celebration there. So would that conflict with ours if we decide to go that route? 4th of July fireworks?
Yes, if you decide to have fireworks, we can talk about what he could do. I mean, but if you decide to have a budget, and that's the direction you want to do, and give the direction to the, but I can't use hotel motel tax for
Right, no,
fireworks.
and that.
But if that's the event that you want to put on, then you can do that, and we can give him strong direction to have it on the night.
Yeah, let Riverbend do the fireworks for you. Let Riverbend do the fireworks for you.
We gotta kind of keep this on the holiday extravaganza.
I guess-
I don't wanna be that guy.
So those are the kind of things that we were hoping that we could do. And so, it keeps me honest, it keeps me honest. So one of the things that I strongly recommend that this type of event, as well as others, be filtered through the tourism bureau. I know I don't have one now, but that's my goal, is to get one.
I say something? Citizen input? No.
Go ahead.
This is my understanding, you're gonna get one person, and you're gonna be at all these boards, and you're gonna try different members of these boards, and you're gonna get one out of each board, and then they're gonna get together, and there's gonna be one person that's gonna be running this show for the event center? Is that what you're talking about? Because I can't hear. You know,
I'm sorry. The idea would be, it'd be a seven-member board. There would be representatives from the hospital, the school, 4B, the county, and 2 representatives from the city. And that board would actually help run that event.
the event center.
No, sir.
Events.
Events that happen.
Correct. Okay, you're just talking about one event then.
Well, the item for the agenda was a budget for the holiday extravaganza,
So
which is what I put
that's what
together.
we're talking about right now.
The holiday extravaganza.
The big extravaganza.
Yes, that's what,
Bring that up again, okay?
yes,
So
sir.
I thought that one of the things that you were trying to do is get somebody to run all the events for that event center, a person, like that one city controller that mentioned. Her idea, I think, was a brilliant idea. To get a person on payroll from the city that run that event center to get all these events coordinated with our city staff. That's all I'm gonna say.
He said that.
That is still our vision and our goal.
That's all I'm saying.
I hate to be a stick in the eye again, but I do have a question. It seems to me that you guys have got the cart in front of the horse. You've asked the city manager to come up with a budget. Councilman Tejeda wants to table the actual C&A later on. I don't know that you folks have yet said that you want a holiday extravaganza. Has the city council unanimously voted to even say, we're gonna have the event? I've only heard one man say it, and he's had his name underneath here for it. I think the city council needs to vote on whether or not you guys are gonna have a holiday extravaganza this year.
Coming up next.
That's on the items.
It's on the item.
They're gonna vote on it.
No, that's only the budget.
I have a question. Well, I think some people need an explanation too, because I know it's common thought that the holiday extravaganza is paid for by tax dollars, which isn't exactly true. It's paid for by bed and head dollars, which are people staying in the hotels from the outside for the most part. Maybe you might just cover that a little bit, because I know several people that have approached me that, I'm actually for a holiday extravaganza if it's done right, okay? But it needs to be done right, and in the past, it hasn't always been done right. But I think that maybe explaining that to some of the people, once again, might actually help them to understand. I mean, we, as I understand, have almost $900,000 in head and bed money, which is for tourist and visitor money. I know not all of that comes from the actual taxes on the hotels, but a lot of it does. So things like the holiday extravaganza, or what Cycle Ranch is doing, or the balloon festival, these are not tax dollars per se. They're coming from the taxpayers in Wilson County. These are tax dollars. And just if somebody would explain that to everybody, because I think that's the biggest thing that a lot of people just don't understand or don't.
I think people do understand, Cindy, but we like to create a perception that there's something wrong going on. And that's not the case. Those are hotel fees paid by people that are passing through Floresville. You're right, it's not a ad valorem tax, it's not a sales tax, it's more or less a fee. And I appreciate your comments, but we had a presentation by the River Bend, which I totally support. No comments were made. We're gonna have a presentation by the Cycle Ranch. No comments were made.
Opposition.
No opposition. We're gonna be selective on what we want to spend our money on. And this is what, the vision that these two gentlemen have been talking about. We all need to work together to promote Floresville. Whether it be a German festival, whether it be a Polish festival, whether it be a Hispanic festival, whatever, we all need to work together. And the idea that you have, excuse me for saying that, the idea that some people have is that it's a Hispanic event. It's not a Hispanic event. We have tried country artists and there was very poor turnout. So it has predominantly been Hispanics, but it has been a very successful event. And the only people who have said otherwise have been a local businessman and a local newspaper that said it's not a successful event. If you attended, it's been a packed house every time.
Mrs. Stern, is there any way on the expenses, it's got the 60,205, that you and I can get together and we can do like what's approved under the hotel occupancy tax that can be applied to this, so that would be coming just from the hotel occupancy tax, and we put together a sheet that would address some of the issues that you brought up, to say, this is what's going from the heads to beds tax, and not from the general fund.
Yeah,
That's a great
I
idea.
think she also wanted to have clarification on where the hotel motel tax comes from.
Well, I know, I understand, I just have people
Well,
that.
I think that was your question, that you want the council to address, that this comes from hotel motel tax, in reference to those who stayed in the hotels rather than ad valorem tax or people's real estate taxes. And then in reference to the hotel motel tax for this event, if it's a cultural arts event, they qualify under hotel motel tax for the event.
Question in the audience?
I agree with everything, but there's only one thing I disagree with. We have a lot of people here in Floresville, and I'm just like everybody else in Floresville, but we have a lot of people that are low income money, and they can't make these events. What are we gonna do for these people to get them involved also? Because, $100 for a couple, for some people, is too much money. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I'm trying to throw here, that,
Let me say something on what Mr. Jones had said. I think at that last meeting, I was under the understanding we were just gonna look at the budget and see, you would present a budget. And then from there, we would go and approve, either say yea or nay, let's go with it. But from what I'm reading, the way it's read here, it's just a budget that we're approving. Am I correct?
Yeah, not necessarily.
It's a budget before the holiday.
The wording on 2E is to approve a budget, so that, if they came in and said it was gonna cost $200,000 to put on, and that was the minimum budget that could be done for it, then obviously the city would have to consider whether it would be put on. So it was the creation of a budget to see whether it was feasible, and then the budget can be, as the proposed, can be adopted, and then to whether actually implement that budget and whether to put on the extravaganza would be a separate vote.
But going off of Mr. Jones's cart before the horse, we still need to have this Visitors and Tourist Bureau committee set up, established, so that we can have 10,000 holiday extravaganzas or 5,000 balloon events or whatever it is, as long as someone else is handling and doing the footwork for it and presenting it to the city.
And that's a council decision, whether you want to have the visitors just go first or whether you want the planning to go forward with
Of
that.
course, that's the only way that I feel is going to be the correct allocation to, for those funds.
Eric, I don't disagree with you, but I have another statement to make in reference to that. As I understand it, it was several months past that the council actually voted to implement the tourist and visitor committee.
Yes.
And we
Yeah,
still-
like I said, I don't like to be the rules guy, but
Oh, we can't talk
we'll
about
get
it.
to the
Okay.
visitors and tourist bureau later,
Okay.
and we keep it on the holiday strategy.
item 1L, update on Floresville Volunteer Fire Department agreement. They've been so patiently sitting back there.
Yes, Mayor, I'm so happy that the chief came. Thank you, Chief, if you could join me. Councilor Tahada asked for an update on the Floresville Fire Department agreement. He wasn't on the council at the time, and so in my memo, I just said that there's a copy of the agreement, fully executed agreement that we did September 2014. Also, is a copy of the budget for the fire department. Please note that the city pays a total of $60,000 to the department for their services. So we're contracting with them, something similar to what Wilson County does as well. To date, once the reports are made, then we pay on a quarterly basis. We made one payment to date of $15,000 in October, and the second payment is pending. As part of the agreement, we will assist with any grants and have reserved for equipment and repairs of about $10,000 in the budget. There is a budget attached. We remain ownership of the land in the building, with all insurances and training and paying of the volunteers, and the retirement benefits are done by the chief. But I'll let the chief speak to the agreement and how it's working with him.
Can I ask
Chief,
you a
thank-
question on that first? When you said that we make the first payment in October, do we pay the first part of the quarter or the end?
It's kind of like an exchange. We pay, they submit us reports on what's going on, and once they submit us reports in a quarterly manner, then we pay. So they submitted their first report and gave us all of the insurances, including insurances, and then we paid. I couldn't say if it was the 1st of October or the 2nd, but once they submitted those reports, then we paid them the $15,000.
Is that why the second payment is pending?
It's pending because they haven't submitted their report as of yet.
Chief, thanks for coming. The reason I asked for you to make a presentation or to even discuss this is I had gone to one of the budget meetings before I was elected. And during the budget meeting, it was said that the fire department is not a priority. Fire protection was not a priority. I don't know if you were at that meeting or some of the other officers. So what has happened, what has transpired with the interlocal agreement and the breakaway as a city department that we once had?
Okay, from what I understood, the way it was funded and everything, it was not legal. We didn't have a charter also at the time. I don't know if the charter was thrown away or what, but there is no charter. The fire department was established back in 1914, and it's been part of the city since then, So we had to pull away from the city, make it on our own, at that time.
And are you making financially?
We're still working on that too.
That was a number that the fire department had actually presented to the city of Floresville during the budgeting process. That's why we were in the position that's why they're receiving the check that they asked for.
And also, the city also gave us a leeway to, if our expenses were to increase, that we visit that.
I think it was 6 months into the budget, we talked about revisiting that. And what you were alluding to earlier was, I guess, before, the way things, the funds were, I guess, delegated to the fire department were always done the proper way. So there was question on what funds you actually got, what funds you actually didn't. Because at first, with Ms. Turner, I think the $60,000 was kind of a surprise. Like, well, we've never done that much. We had a different money, I guess, that we actually allocated to you, but in actuality, you were getting that money. But now we're just doing it as a separate form.
Correct, well, we're getting the money through y'all by being part of the city of Floresville. So everything's already budgeted out, what do you call it, maintenance, training and all that.
And I want to clarify that a little bit. The fire department isn't actually part of the city of Floresville and never has been part of the city of Floresville. They've always been the volunteer fire department. The way it was done previously, there was no service provider contract, there was no anything, it was just, we're gonna put money in, I think it was 3 or 4 separate budget items that would somehow get funneled, which isn't in accordance with auditing standards and with the laws of the state of Texas. So this was done to formalize it, have an actual service provider agreement, and create a service provider contract between the city and between the fire department so that we can legally give them the funds and have a proper budget and everything else.
And then they can allocate those funds however they deem where they allocate them.
Correct. But again, the fire department is part of the city since 1914, so.
Right, so this is a similar agreement that we have, the county has with them as well. You have to remember that they're volunteers, and so they need to have insurance. If they can't show up on the city's insurance because they're not city employees. So if they get hurt, we can't actually provide insurance for them because they're not city employees. So they provide workman's compensation for their volunteers if they're hurt. They provide insurance for them. They have, and they own apparatus as well as we own the apparatus as well. And so what this is doing is making, because they are a separate entity, they have their own 503, they're a separate entity, that we're actually contracting with them to provide services for the city of Floresville. One of the things that I know Councilman Nieto was very serious about, that as they go out on their own, we want to make sure they have enough money, that they'll come back, as they're doing this, paying their own bills, to come back to say, is $60,000 enough? And then if not, we can relook at that again. That was always the understanding. And so they hired an accountant, correct? So they have an accountant to keep track, because before they just submit the bills to us and we pay. But our attorney says that we can't have that intermixed because we are separate entities, but we still related and we still want to pay them. So we didn't kick them to the curb. What we're doing is actually giving them and funding them at the level that they need to be funded. They asked for 60. The city manager had a different recommendation, but they asked for 60, and we funded them fully at $60,000. We will look at this again once their accountant is able to look to see. They'll have their own separate audit, and then we can see if it's coming up, because county also pays them as they cover what area, Chief?
Anything from 181 to the west, north of the county, and back west all the way to the county line to Atascosa.
Yeah.
And then back to 97.
How about south?
How about
South, probably the curve.
How does that separation work as far as the firehouse and the fire trucks? I believe some of them are owned by the
Correct.
city.
Yes, some
I
of the
believe the
trucks are
land and the
city.
building where the firehouse is owned by the city.
Correct.
And they have a lease to use it while they're providing fire services to the city. Should they ever quit, the city still owns the building and the land, and then
Yeah.
can stay.
The city's always owned the property and the building.
And we maintain ownership of that. But we're leasing it to them. The equipment that we have, they use, we agree that if we go out for any grants, that we can go out together. And there's some big ticket items in reference to their trucks. So that's why we reserve $10,000 for maintenance that's in our budget, so that they can keep it going if they have to. And this is really important because I think Wilson County just, was it Sutherland Springs? Sutherland Springs Volunteer Fire Department is having a hard time surviving. So we are supporting them at the level that they requested, but we are going to be looking at that after they submit their next payment and their accountant comes back and look at their numbers to see how we're doing and if they need to come back and adjust that budget number. I think they wanted to adjust it up, they probably don't want to adjust it down.
Correct.
So I hope that answers your question. Now, in your budget, you have the budget as well as the fully executed agreement.
If the fire department has any concerns, or if they're not comfortable with the whole situation, please, contact one of your council members or the city manager.
At this time, we have no problem with this time. We're working with the city, yeah. And if something does come up, I would definitely let you know. And again, I'd like to take this time to thank all of you for supporting us, and Ms. Turner. So if you have anything else to ask me, anytime, let me know. Yes, September 12th, we have our logging dinner too, so that's part of our fundraiser. So I'll invite.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Okay, now let's go back to item 1I, review the adoption of 6% reduction in standard Floresville Event Center rental rates for Wilson County nonprofit organizations.
Mayor, if I may, Councilman Tahada asked for this to be on the agenda, so I'll give a simple overview. Attached to the agenda and the minutes from the October 23rd meeting 2014, at the request of Councilman Nieto, was to have a mechanism to allow for discounted rates for fees for the event center for non-for-profit agencies. We played around this for some time because it was a question about non-for-profit, in and out. We didn't want to do a general one, so it came back and we have a list of the exempt organizations for Wilson County. We need to have a tie-in to Wilson County and the city of Floresville. And also attached is a list of the fees for the event that was approved on May 8th, 2014. So basically, it just means that if a non-for-profit applies and they can show status to our staff, that they have it on file, that they get a 50%. So we didn't alter the fee schedule, just say that's the rate and make it a 50% discount. Previously, it was 30%, and then when we adopted the new fees in May, it went to 20%. But we really want to have this facility being used. Councilman Nieto took the lead on that, and so that's what happened in 2014. Did that answer your questions, Councilman Tom?
Ms. Turner, just to clarify, those 50% is only on rental, correct?
The rental fees, but sometimes the fees would include AC or whatever they put together. But if you're referring to the housekeeping, it should not include for housekeeping, and I have spoken to staff in reference to that.
Yeah, it's my understanding there was one particular event that we were paying for cleanup and giving them a discount while the city was paying for the cleanup of the facility.
Yeah, I think the error was they totaled and included everything, and then they did 50%. So I've spoken to staff, they need to take the cleaning out and just actually the fees itself. So just the bare basic fee. And so Gloria's made that adjustment already, so we won't have that problem again.
Okay, then now let's go to item 1J, City of Floresville hosting National Day of Prayer on May 7th, 2015.
We've talked about the negative publicity, the ugly feelings that have happened the last few years here in Floresville. And one of the things that we went away from was the National Day of Prayer that we used to host right here by the memorial. And for whatever reason, we stopped doing it. And this is a national day, recognized in every city across America. I'd like for the city to get back into prayer, at least on that particular day, National Day of Prayer. Praying for our nation, praying for our community. It's just a discussion item, but, and I don't know who would host it, who would organize it. Last time it was just staff volunteers and, put it together, calling the different churches. But I know we don't have a committee for that yet.
Well, I don't think it's a hotel motel tax issue, but I did a little research. I didn't know that there was a National Day of Prayer. You have to forgive me because we did not open the ceremony today with prayer. I'm not used to praying at government meetings. I'm from Illinois, and we don't pray at stuff like this, but we do in Texas. So,
and the day is recognized May 7th. That's the day it's recognized as the National Day of Prayer.
yes, staff would have no problem because it is federal recognition as well, that we could put together flyers and stuff. I just wanted to, at your request, we put it on the agenda, and in your information, I just went on to define when it does observe, and it is on May 7th. So we could put together a prayer and invite.
You want to nod of the head?
I need a consensus.
I'm all for prayer.
There will need to be a CNA.
We'll have to do a CNA on the next meeting.
Not a problem. It'll be before the
We don't
7th.
need to see it.
It'll be before the meeting. We'll have it when we come back next week.
Well, I don't think it was ever taken out from the, officially.
The President canceled it last year. The President of the United States canceled it last year.
I don't-
Whether he does it again this year or not.
It was actually established.
They made it on Obama, huh?
It was enacted in 1952. But when did
You're from Illinois, so that makes sense anyway. Not talking
makes- it
together.
makes sense.
He was a senator there, so.
I mean, really, the last city I had, my last mayor, he canceled Halloween, so, it's something I can put together, we can vote on it, if the council says we need to vote on it, I'll put on the agenda for a simple vote, but I can put together some things in reference to that, Actually, this is really gonna help me do something I've been wanting to do, is to invite the different ministers to come speak, so I don't have to pray at these meetings. So then it can open up that dialogue, and we can use this as a, hopefully, to be able to put a program together. And they did it at, just so I can make sure it was
It was right here, but, you know,
at the Memorial
or the
Center.
event center, they have a huge building up there.
The American Legion has adopted that memorial and has been keeping up with the flags and everything and everything to making sure, so it's.
You know, there's a pastoral alliance here in town.
I'm sorry?
There's a pastoral alliance here in town.
Yes, and that's
I don't
where
know
I'm
who's
going. I'm going straight to them, so
Okay.
that they can help me put together, or maybe even publicize some of the programs.
Yes, ma'am, Martinez?
The last prayer day that we had, I remember I had just started working with the event center, and that was back in 2012, and Carolyn had put that together. And we had it after the event finished, and that was back in 2012. That was the last one we had.
Right, so now we have a staff member who will help put that together.
Yep.
All right?
So tickets while you're at it.
They just assigned it to Henrietta. You might speak to the Fellowship for Christian Athletes, because I do know that they put something on at the school, like a meet me at the flagpole where they pray in the morning before.
I really do.
Okay.
Add it to your list, Henrietta. Add it to your list. Okay, now we're going to go on to item 1K, plan of action for tank maintenance repairs recommendations by M&S Engineering. Mr. Turk, you're on.
Good evening. I just want to spend a little time this evening giving you an update on what is going on with the water storage tanks across the city. As you know, there was a tank inspection report that was provided to the city a few months ago. We have taken that report and we have reviewed it thoroughly. We've made our own observations, and we came up with a set of recommendations that we provided to the city. And I believe, does the council have a copy of this letter dated March 5th? Yes? Okay. For the very specific recommendations have been made. I'm going to go over these very briefly. If you have detailed questions, please stop and ask me. The first item here, the first group of items have to do with the plaza water plant, the ground storage tank, which has been a subject of much discussion, is in pretty poor shape, and it needs to be taken offline as soon as we can do that practically, and we are working on some options to get that done. The elevated storage tank has a few minor items that are needed to bring it to within compliance with TECQ regulations. And let me stop here to explain. There's a list of things that need to be done to all the tanks. Our first priority was to do those things that gets the tanks back into TCEQ compliance. We have another list that we're going to start working on when these are complete. So these are basically the important things to do right now. The second group of items there is for the hospital water tanks. We have to replace a ladder, and then we've got to fix some holes in the top of the tank. We got to fix the ladder before we can get up there, so that is a costly item, but it is necessary. And then some minor improvements to the elevated storage tank. And then the last is the B Street tank, which is just some minor improvements there. I do want to talk a little bit about the Plaza water tank. Again, we do recommend we take it offline, and we are looking at a temporary fix. that includes acquiring 2 water tanks from Springs Hill Water Supply Corporation and transporting them to the site here in Floresville, setting them up, piping them so they work, and using those until a new tank can be constructed. And we estimate that time frame to be somewhere between a year or two, depending on financing and budgeting and things like that. Ms. Turner just passed out a concept sketch that shows a couple of pictures of those existing tanks. They are located in Seguin. Springs Hill Water Corporation at one time operated a water plant at that site. It has been taken offline. They no longer need them. And they have been looking for someone who could make good use of them. They are a client of ours, and one of our engineers, Nancy Turner, put 2 and 2 together and realized that there was a need here in Floresville, and there was a desire with Springs Hill to get rid of their surplus tanks. So we think we can make the system work. We have certainly not looked into all the details yet. There's some planning that has to be done, but at this point we're comfortable that it will all work, but many details to be worked out. Are there any questions on what we are doing with the tanks?
Mr. Turk, you mentioned temporary fix with this?
Yes.
So how long, you said temporary, 1 to 2 years?
Yeah, it's temporary in the sense that we want something in place while a new tank is being constructed, and we think that will take about a year or 2, depending on funding and financing and things like that. Once those tanks are put into place and put into use, they can be there and operate for quite some time, well beyond the 1 or 2 year time frame.
So they just serve as a backup, I guess, once it's...
Once we put the new tanks in, we have many options. You can take them down and sell them to somebody else. They could stay there as a backup and additional storage, or they could be moved around to other water production sites in Floresville when and if those tanks need to be taken out of service or replaced. So you have lots of options.
And what's the turnaround time as far as, once they're purchased, get them from Seguin to here to get them operating?
Oh, we're still working on that, but I think it's a good 30 to 60 day process once you commit to doing it. We have to bring in a crane, lift them onto trucks, truck them in, prepare foundations, set them up, get the fittings connected. There are a few unknowns that we have to deal with. One is the water treatment. Currently, at all of the sites, you have an aeration chamber. Water is pumped from your wells through the chambers into the tanks, and the chambers serve to provide some treatment of the sulfur in your water. We're not really sure how much treatment is actually being provided. We're doing some analysis. We're getting some water samples before and after the treatment to understand if any treatment is being accomplished. What we are thinking is that we may bypass that existing aeration chamber and accomplish the treatment inside the tank, and we can do that with essentially air blowers. So that's kind of something we're still looking at. We haven't convinced ourselves yet of the right solution, but those are some of the things that we've still got to work through. This is an idea that's about a week old. We think it will work, but we want to make sure that we work out all the details, and we're very confident that it will work, and it's worth the money to actually do it before we actually recommend it.
Will these tanks be inspected prior to
Absolutely.
purchasing or whatever?
Absolutely. We've had discussions with Spring Hill about their use of the tank, their condition, and they've said consistently that they're in very good shape. They've been kept up well And there's a whole slew of regulations about how you move the tanks, disinfect them, and put them back in service, and all that will be followed. So that, absolutely. Thank you for mentioning that. Because it is a new installation, we'll have to get it permitted with TCEQ. And this is somewhat unconventional, so we'll have to spend some time with them demonstrating, what we're trying to accomplish, and that it'll work for as long as we need it to work.
Now, is it possible that after using these temporarily at the Plaza Well, that we can perhaps move them to another location within the city of Floresville?
Yes.
That are actually put them back in line, like the one right there off of Standish Street? Because that was taken out of service, correct?
Yeah, you could put them there, but I believe the water supply at Standish isn't good, and they would serve no purpose there other than just temporary storage of the tanks themselves.
So we'd actually have to pump another, or drill another well?
Yes, and I don't know that you'd do it there, because the water has bacteria that could not be cycled out. So if you were to drill a new well somewhere in Floresville, I wouldn't recommend it be there.
What did you say about the water there, that one that's down in Spanish?
Standish, my understanding, I don't know this for a fact, but it's my understanding, I've been told that there's bacteria in the water that's being pumped from that well. And there was a pretty significant attempt to clear that bacteria, and it was unsuccessful. So it eventually was abandoned. And that well is no longer operational. I understand it has been plugged, and it is completely out of service.
And can it be unplugged and
Of course, at a cost, well, yes.
The understanding that I have is that the city put in a significant amount of money into that tank right before I became mayor, I believe.
Which tank are we
The
talking
one
about?
up Standish.